Melissa,
Sarah,
what are we doing tonight?
we're getting smutty with Brittany and Vic.
Ooh. Cheers and happy Valentine's Day. Whether it's a Valentine's celebration of yourself and the one that you love, or if it's a day of self-love, I think we just want to extend our smuttiest wishes to all of you out there. What do you think, Melissa?
I agree. I am excited that we're going to finally explore this little corner, this little nook, this cranny, this little pocket of literature that we don't always necessarily dig our way into very deeply. And that is the smut genre. Now, I'll be the first to admit, nothing gets me more riled up than reading what I affectionately call a one-handed read. But I wouldn't really consider myself a lover of smut, to be honest. I'm not a prude, but I think I'm maybe just a little bit more of a fan of highbrow erotica. How about you?
I like that, Melissa. Highbrow erotica. Yeah, I mean, I dabble. It's funny. We talked about this one of our last episodes, my first exposure to kind of the world of sex within books and how it kind of came to me in like an earlier age. And so I would say my first encounter with what I would, I don't know, classify as like light smut would have been from my my beloved Sweet Valley High series.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that those who are reading like hardcore smut would probably giggle at that. But for a 10-year-old Sarah to be reading this, I mean, it worked, and it really worked, if you know what I mean. And so after our kind of conversation about this random memory that I had about Sweet Valley High and these early awakenings, I guess we'll call them, I actually went and found the book that had the scene that had like stuck out so clearly in my mind, and I reread the whole thing. And it still worked for me.
Still got you there?
It still got me there. Yeah, it did. So, and I love a good sex scene. I love a good sex scene in a book. I love a well-written sex scene because I feel like you can get taken out pretty easily by, pulsing members and, some really kind of like unfortunate choices of words that can kind of like make you go from to
Member is definitely one of those. I'm like, that
Yeah.
that can't be the best you can do.
Swollen Member, which if I remember correctly is actually the name of a hip hop group in Canada. Swollen Members.
It sure is.
Yeah.
So I will briefly use this opportunity to advise the listeners. You've been with us this far. I think so far it's been kind of subtle, maybe innuendo territory so far, but things might get a bit explicit. So maybe you're not used to seeing that little E next to the Could Read, Should Read, Must Read podcast logo. It's for erotic. It's for explicit. And folks, if you're listening to this in the presence of your children, a clergy member that you feel maybe might be a bit more conservative than you,
your mother, our mothers.
Yeah, you're just gonna want to just pause right now, and then just come back to us in the dead of night when you're by yourself in darkness. But it's not just Sarah and I who are here, because I think it's clear that we need a multi-perspective here. And tonight, it's not just a duo. It's not even just a three-way. This is a foursome tonight, folks. And I am very delighted to let you know that we've brought in some experts, some smut-loving firecrackers, some queens of kink. Please welcome to the show, Victoria the Vixen Cole and Brittany the Body Broad Noseworthy. Thank you two for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for those descriptions of us. They are
Fabulous.
our English profs would love to hear us described as that. And
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I may have told your former English prof that we were doing this.
amazing. When we worked at Cole's, which is a giant bookstore chain, someone put my staff pick sticker on the book Beautiful Bastard, which is just sex after sex chapter. And
Yeah, I believe it starts on page 6.
yeah, and he picked it up and flicked through it and was like, this is your choice for everyone to read? And I was like, I guess, yeah.
The person who put that sticker on the book was me.
Oh, was that like a prank that you guys would do?
No,
Like take you to
no,
this-
no,
Oh.
no. I knew she loved that book, so I was just like, no, she loves this book.
You can secretly love this book.
If I tried to keep it secret and pretend I was reading some like
Classic.
yeah,
You
like
know,
a Clockwork Orange and stuff like that.
Literary.
To Kill a Mockingbird, not Beautiful Bastard.
So Sarah kindly, told us about her experiences with Sweet Valley High and, coming across some of these books very early on. When we did our crossover special with Hulk Caesar in the summer, I talked about a book that I read as a very young person, and it was called Come Together. And of course, it was spelled C-O-M-E, but I very much feel the intention was that it should have been C-U-M together. The opening scene that I read on Christmas Day of 1997 was of a guy jerking off in a train car. So that was formative for me. But another one that was formative for me, and I still have it, and I just want to reinforce the fact that I have moved a lot of times in my life. Like I have moved between countries, I've moved between houses, and some of the times that I have moved, we've had to pay to have our stuff shipped, and the charge is by the pound. And we have a lot of books. So sometimes we get very choosy about which books are going to be packed and relocated. But this book has every single time made the cut, and I have it here. Forever by Judy Blume. Look how vintage that looks. Isn't that amazing?
That's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
It's like I would say it's pristine, but it's not. That spine is cracked, baby. This is a well-loved book. And if you're only going to hold it with one hand, you're really spreading those pages. This could practically fall open to a couple of spots where Michael refers to his member as Ralph. Did anyone else read this?
I didn't.
Okay.
I did, but I think I blocked it out.
So yeah, and I still have it. I was able to within 5 minutes of this conversation, I was like, I know exactly where the book is. I have no idea where my passport is right now. Birth certificate, unclear. But my original 1986 publication of Forever by Judy Blume was very easily
Right in your
located.
bedside table.
All right, your turn, ladies, and I'll let you choose amongst yourself of who wants to share and divulge first. What brought you into this? What was your first foray, your first smutty reading experience?
So I actually have the first ever smutty book I read. It was my mother's. So we used to go camping every weekend in the summer, and my mom would bring all these books out with her. And her favorite thing was to smoke a little ciggy and have a coffee in the morning and read a smutty mass market paperback. But in the nighttime, all the parents would go and have a fire, and me and the girls would stay in the trailer, and we would just be hanging out. And one night we picked up Shadow Dance by Julie Garwood.
Oh.
And this was my sexual education for the longest time. I learned a lot. I was horrified. I then went out and bought all the Julie Garwood books when I was old enough to do it. So when I turned 19, I bought every book in this series and was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But these are more of these are ones a Nan would read. What I read now very much overshadows this, but it still had a few sex scenes and none of them were fade to black. So I learned, which was important.
That's what we like. We
hate a fade to black.
No
Oh.
fade to black.
Yeah.
Mine was a little bit different in that my introduction was actually fan fiction.
Mm.
That was definitely my introduction to the world of smut, or as we called it back then, there was a lemon scale.
Oh,
Yeah, so if a fic had a lot of smut scene, had a lot of sex, it was really lemony. And they would say many lemons, or yeah, I don't know if it's like the puckering of the mouth or anything, but yeah, that was my complete introduction to it.
I keep thinking it's like tart and juicy. Like
Yeah.
that's like what it represents
Mhm.
better.
Yeah, now it's spice.
Yeah, now it's the spice meter.
Mm.
Stuff like
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, I think TikTok I probably birthed that term, but
Let's bring it back. Here's our
yeah,
chance. Let's do
the
this.
lemons. Let's bring back the lemons.
Let's leave the
please.
peppers out of it and
Mm.
bring back the lemons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because a lemon works for me actually. It's in terms of its like girth, it's a very firm
It
like,
is
piece
juicy,
of produce. And that
juicy,
little nub on the
purple.
end is just like the most pert little nipple.
Yes.
You're
Right?
not
Right.
wrong.
I'm not gonna lie. Recently, it was brought to my attention. There was a vibrator in the shape of a lemon advertised to me on the algorithm.
On the TikTok
On
algorithm.
the Facebook, I think actually.
Oh.
So the Zuckerberg was
He knows what you're doing.
yes.
Was it made in America? Because we are in a trade war, ladies.
Yeah, unfortunately, it may have been. I may have to deep dive a little further into that, but
But that just made me think, a little segue. At Kohl's, we sell all of these sexy books, but then we started selling,
yeah, the
But,
wellness.
like in the wellness section of Indigo, they started selling vibrators and like a bunch
Really?
of sex toys and
women's
stuff.
health.
Yeah. And
That's awesome.
It
Right?
is. The shocking thing was when all of this started, people were getting really upset that Indigo was selling like women's wellness,
Some
like
people.
sex toys. Not everyone, but we had to get like
men.
men. We had to get like these handouts about what to do if someone came in the store and tried to confront us about this. And I was like, they should check the romance section if this is what they're upset about.
Yeah.
I think the book boyfriends are more stressful than the sex toys. Like,
I actually find it quite fascinating that all of us have access to these books. Like these are extremely formative to us, clearly, that we remember them,
Mhm.
we've kept them, we can put our hands on them quite easily. What do you make of that, folks? Like, why is this so important to us?
I feel like these books are important to me because I wouldn't know what I liked without them. Does that make sense?
Well, the thing is, most of these books are written by women.
Yeah.
So they're coming from the women's gaze. They're written by women. They're what women want.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I went full on method to figure out what I wanted. I left the books at home for a few years and just experiential learning was my path.
I did a lot of experiential learning and it was all horrible. And then I read some of these books and was like, why don't I just tell a man what's in this book and he could do that to me and it could be a lot better.
That's not my experience, but I think they're just I think they're great for empowering women. It's something that kind of we get to have.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, obviously it's open to everybody, but it's obviously a very women driven industry. And romance is the best selling genre of fiction. That is before book talk.
Yep.
It's completely driven by women. And I love that for us.
Yeah. We deserve it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like books are just such a what a great and safe way to explore. To like explore, like you said, and maybe figure out what you like, but also just explore things that you wouldn't necessarily have the courage to explore, or maybe wouldn't be safe to explore.
Absolutely. It's such a form of escapism for me.
It's self-soothing in a way when I read them. and like I'm very particular about which ones I read. I'm not just like picking up any like erotica or smut and reading it. Like it needs to be a little silly. It needs to have good banter and stuff like that. But it's almost comforting. Like I'll reread these books over and over again, and not even like a little one-handed read. Like I'm just reading them because I enjoy them.
Okay, so you said that you're selective about it. And, you know, Brittany also said this is like a majorly lucrative market, we'll say. But from my purview, there's just so much. Like you could Google search any weird kink and it'll be like, there's a book about that. So how are you refining this search to find something that you're like, this is going to do what I need it to do, which is not clearly not just getting you off.
Like a lot of them are like DNFs for me, like did not finish. Like I will
Didn't need to finish.
But like I will just like I will put a book down if it's not what I'm looking for.
Oh, absolutely.
But like we have very similar
We do.
realms of it.
I know that there is a difference between smut and erotica, but I love romance books with smut scenes. It's not just pure smut. These books need to have a plot in
Yes.
order for me to enjoy them.
And I like a series as well.
Yeah.
So like we read a lot of sports romance.
Yeah.
So it'll be like one team member and this girl, and then the next book will be like the girl's friend and another team member, or like someone's sister and another team member. Like
You're saying member.
Yeah.
I am. I don't even pick up on it. I'm not a very punny person, so they just go like right over my head.
So you're okay with it being like really repetitive, that it's like, okay, I got to back up. This is going to sound like an insane comparison, but do you guys remember, I'm sure you do, The Walking Dead, when it first came out as a TV show?
Yes.
So when it very first came out, I was like, oh, this is cool. I was into it, but it would like make me get all scared. And then I'd be okay again. Like I'd get all scared. And then everyone was okay again. And I was like, I'm done with this show. It's the same emotional arc every single week. Like I get super scared and then everybody's fine. Maybe one person dies, but we didn't really like him anyway. I feel like it's it's kind of the same build up and release in some of these books.
Absolutely. The same third act breakup in every single one. Some of them are not quite as bad as the others. Some of them they let you down easy, and then it's just a tiny little bit of miscommunication, and then they're okay again. But I think there's something comforting in that, because these romance books, you know, they're going to have a happily ever after. It's kind of one of the rules for a book to be in the romance section, is it's going to have a happily ever after. And while the plot points, yes, they are absolutely repetitive, it's comforting to me, because you know what you're getting yourself into. And then it goes back to the tropes. You know, what ones do you like? Do you like an enemies to lovers? Do you like forced proximity, where they're in a hotel room and there's only one bed? You know,
Always only one bed.
But everyone is a little bit different, and it's those differences that keep me coming back, but at the same time, super comforting to me, at least.
Yeah, same for me. It is a comfort thing. Like,
yeah, and the shelves are filled with them.
Sarah, what would you say is your distinction between smut and erotica?
I don't know. Like I have two thoughts about it. I feel like erotica is maybe more cerebral, if that makes sense. Like there's more of like a psychological element at play in the writing, where I feel like smut is just like bare bones. It's not pretending to be anything other than what it is. So I think that's really, I think the distinction that I make is like, one is a little bit more, I guess, like sophisticated, and is as kind of approaching it maybe from a different angle. And it is a little bit more playing with the mind than it is just like, you know, going at it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think about it in terms of some of the books we've read lately. And we've kind of joked sometimes about like, well, that sex scene had to be there. I mean, it moved the plot forward, is important in terms of the character's development. You know, like if it's like a device in the book that is necessary. And I also think erotica is a little more risky, not risque, but risky. Very important differentiation there as well. And I mean, I'll reference all fours. And this is a spoiler to some extent for the book, but Sarah, like the tampon scene is erotica. Like,
Oh my God. Is it ever? Yeah.
it's so perverse, but it's so stimulating, but it's also critical to how you understand that narrator character. So
Yeah.
it's
and the relationship between those two people.
yeah. And maybe we come back to like, we focus so much in the discussion about all fours on intimacy, right? Is like, where does the sort of intimacy scale kind of like calibrate in relation to smut as opposed to in relation to erotica? And another book that I did kind of grab in preparation for this chat was Intermezzo. Some beautiful sex scenes in there, but like, it took me 30 seconds to find one because I'm like, just find a series of 6 pages where there's no punctuation or paragraph breaks. And that is 100% Sally Rooney, just like, and then he, and then she, and then he, and oh, and like the most awkward Irish man getting a hand job is like, you know, a very intense set of 5 pages. But anyway.
And it was about like every 25 pages that you were, it's like, find a sex scene and then in 25 more pages you're going to get to another sex scene. But again, it was all very relevant to the plot. So
yes. Yeah. If any of the pairings had not had some kind of sexual interaction in one way or another in that book, it would have been to the detriment of the overall denouement, if I may. All right, so I'd like you now, if you have it at the ready, no pressure, but I did give you a little bit of advance notice about this. It's time to share your favorite filth. Do you have passages?
We do.
Right.
This was a hard choice.
There was so much masturbating that went on trying to find out exactly which one to share.
So hard.
You're both tired. You have carpal tunnel. It's you're going to be coming after us for some sort of like compensation for injuries.
Were you asked on a podcast to talk about smut and ended up masturbating yourself into surgery?
I find the romance books have actually gotten a lot better in terms of consent and their descriptions, and they've gotten
woke,
more woke, politically correct, I guess.
Did you guys, any of you ever hear of the book Fanny Hill? It's from like the 18th century.
Yeah.
Okay. And we weren't even in the same class that would have addressed this, but so Fanny goes through her life as she may or may not be a prostitute. I can't remember. I think
for some reason. Yeah.
And I did read it in a course that was called Whore's Story. So probably she was a prostitute, but she goes around and she'll find like, it was like men of different trades. And so when she was like making it with the plumber, it was all about his pipes and his, burst of liquid and whatever. And then when she was with the carpenter, it was all about his wood and how he was hammering. And so like they really exploited like the sort of career related words. Again, this was all set in the 18th century.
Fabulous.
But I, like most students, was a bit of a cheapskate, and so I'd always try to get like used books instead of ordering them and getting like the new ones. And I had no idea what Fanny Hill was going to be about, and I guess I wasn't really in tune to the fact that the class was called Horror Story. And you know how when you buy a used book at a school bookstore, it has a used sticker on it? So this one had like 4 used stickers because it was like used from Dalhousie University, used from St. Mary's University, used from St. Francis Xavier University. And I was like, man, I'm going to get this for a steal. And so it was like cheaper, like the more times it had been used. And it was like one of the raunchiest things I ever read. And I was like, the 18th century stuff doesn't tend to keep my attention But I was like, whoa, like riveted into this book. And then at some point I was like, this is had like 14 used stickers on it. Like there are so many people that were before me, and it like, felt really gross that it had been like passed on. So, and I know I'm taking us off topic to the question that I did pose, but just we're sort of circling something else that I did want to address, because we're talking a lot about your experience working at Cole's, but I know Brittany for sure, but Vic, I feel like you both work at the library or have at certain points worked at the library. The two of you have a similar trajectory.
We follow each other a lot. Yeah.
We orbit each other. We have since we met in 2013
at the bookstore.
At the bookstore.
Yeah, where I just decided she was my best friend.
Is there like erotica at the library that people are just circulating? On the government's dime?
Absolutely. 100%. Yes.
Yes.
Ours all have a little E sticker on them on the spine. It's a little hard to differentiate some of them sometimes because they don't have that sticker. But yeah, no, they totally get checked out all the time, especially now with the rise of book talk, because those books, we're getting all of them and they are just getting passed around to everybody and their mother. And actually it is great to see the age range that are checking out these books. It makes me so happy.
But like there are like little 13-year-olds and stuff coming in. Like one of the women I work with, she has a 14-year-old daughter who had to have like a medical test done the other day, and her reward was a book, and I forget what the title of it was like the fucking Nailed series or something like that. And her mom came in and was like, Victoria, I know you read romance books. Like, is this book okay for my 14-year-old daughter? And I had to be like, I mean,
if we didn't read them, who are we to say that 12 or 13-year-old couldn't read that?
I don't know. Do what you want with that.
It's like my parents were in the clear for having bought me Come Together as COME, but if it had been actually spelled CUM together, like that's on them.
Yeah, it throws me off a lot when I see them like checking out like the really dark romances.
No. But let's get real here, because okay, you cannot enter a porn shop until you can't access porn until you're, I think 18 is the rule in our part of the world anyway. So like the recorded version of it. Now I acknowledge that there's layers happening here because these are actors and these are actual people who are performing. But why is it like, okay, a 13-year-old can be like, I'm here for book 2 in the fucking Nailed series. And you're like, did you have a medical appointment? Good for you. Here you go.
Congratulations.
But like if you went into a porn shop and you're like, do you have, the first video installation of the fucking Nailed CD or series? You'd be like, no, this is illegal. You're 13. Get out of here.
We had those issues at the bookstore as well. I mean, even the YA section in itself, it's such a big range. It's 12 to like 18. So there's a lot of growing up in those ages. Yeah. So some of the books in that section were pretty graphic. And so they were, more directed towards the 16, 17-year-olds. But
I know that like when I had the question here about like sharing a passage, and as you can see, I'm finally making my way back to that original point of this tangent. But I was like, oh, maybe I'll read something from Forever, because like it was, something I really remembered. And the part in the segment that I was like, maybe I'll read this. She's like, hey, how does it feel to know that you've had sex with an older girl? An older woman or something. And she's like, because earlier today I did have my 18th birthday. And I was like, nope, I cannot read this book. Like it is very, very uncomfortable for me to think about having any kind of a voyeur experience of people who are underage. And I loved Judy Blume my whole life. I was like, she's the best. She taught me so much. I love that woman. And then when I read it tonight, I was like, Judy Blume, you kinky weirdo, what the hell are you doing?
What a great segue, as the passage I want to read includes voyeurism.
Oh, let's do it. go, Brittany. Let's
Excellent.
hear it.
So just to set the scene here a little bit, 'cause I'm going to deep dive right into this. The characters, Diana and Shane, are already in the middle of each other. And while Shane's teammate is asleep on the couch in the same room. Here we go. I reach between us to grip him. I'm so drenched that he glides inside effortlessly. I suck in air as he grinds into me, my hips reflexively pushing against him. I've never been filled like this by any other man. The friction of him inside me tickles nerves I didn't know existed. So you're really going to do this, huh? I jolt at the sound of Will's resigned voice. Oh, God. My cheeks are scorching as I twist my head in Will's direction. His face is almost entirely illuminated by the glow of the fish tank. I swallow when I see the unmistakable glint of arousal. Sorry, did we wake you? Shane drawls. Obviously, Will says dryly. Shane flicks his gaze towards the couch. I'll send Dixon over there to tuck you in and sing you a lullaby, but we're a little busy right now. Yeah, I can see that. Shane pauses thoughtfully. Do you like what you see? What the hell do you think? You like watching me fuck my girl? Will doesn't answer. Then he lets out a breath. Don't you two want to move this to the bedroom or something? Neither of us moves. Shane is still inside me. It's crazy. I should tell him to stop, cover myself up, run into the bedroom, but I remain motionless. My pulse throbs between my legs. I know Shane can feel it rippling around him. We're good where we are, he mutters, his hungry gaze locked on my face. But you're welcome to go hide in the bedroom if this offends your delicate eyes. I see Will shift beneath the blankets as he holds eye contact with me. There's a question in his expression. Remember we talked about kinks? I say Riley. This is his. He likes to be watched. Will's tongue comes out to lick at the corner of his mouth. What about you, Di? Do you want me to stay and watch you get fucked? A shiver skitters up my spine. His voice is low, seductive. I nod slowly. Will nods back. Say it out loud. It's a command, not a suggestion. I need to hear your consent. I clear the lust from my throat. Yes, stay. End scene. Well, no, the scene does most definitely continue.
Can I make a guess at what sport these two guys play?
Absolutely.
American football.
No.
We
Baseball.
never read football.
I've read a couple football, but it's not my
They're not
favorite.
my favorite.
Because
No.
they're always just up in each other's junk, like so close.
Oh no, it's hockey.
Watch you
Oh,
with
it's
your
hockey.
lady.
Like
It's hockey?
I'm Canadian through and through, I guess. I don't even really like hockey. I don't watch hockey. But
My second guess was going to be bowling.
I bowling.
I'm in a bowling league, and there's nothing sexy about that sport.
That's why they need to watch each other afterwards.
Yes, that's what they need a book.
I'll write it.
It could be sexy. All those fingering the holes in the balls.
I
and,
mean,
you know,
I read a golf book.
I couldn't finish it.
Yeah, you didn't like that it was in the third person.
No, I don't like a third person.
Picky.
We need to discuss this more before you start reading from Bad Bastard or whatever it is.
No, I'm
have
kind
there.
of switching it up now, actually.
So you don't like third person? Too disconnected? Too passive?
I don't like it. Hate it. Won't read it.
so specifically with Smut, though, you want it to be, or is
Yeah,
it?
I can read just like a regular fiction book in the third person. Yeah.
Okay.
But I
You
want
want to
like,
be in the person's brain.
I want to know how that member makes them feel, you
Okay.
know?
Mhm.
It's
I
not the
understand.
pussy, it's my pussy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're reading the scenes, like, do you picture yourself in the scenes or
No.
do you picture the person?
No, I don't picture myself at all. Well, maybe I do. I don't
That
know.
was convincing.
Okay, but the thing is, when I'm reading these, I'm not reading them like in bed to get off. I'm like reading them at the breakfast table. I'm reading them in my office.
Okay, Vic, it's your turn. Let's
Okay,
hear your filth.
So I'm going to read from Beautiful Bastard by Christina Lauren, which is two best friends. It's two women writing together. So yeah, it's about a girl who's finishing her MBA. Her name is Chloe, and she works for a man called Bennett Ryan. After I read this book, the name Bennett ended up on all like my baby name lists. I was like, oh my goodness. And then I was like, no, that's not right.
I want my baby to be sexy.
I want a sexy baby named Bennett. But yeah, he's an asshole. He's a beautiful bastard. And she's hot too. So yeah, this scene starts where he makes her stay late after she's had the shittiest day, and makes her present something for him that's not ready. He's just kind of trying to power trip over her. And it's just the two of them.
So is he like her?
He's her like leader, like her boss. Like she works directly under. She's like doing her internship with him. Kind of.
Okay, got it.
It's like a year-long internship.
Directly under him.
Directly under.
She's on top of him in this scene, though.
Okay.
So anyway, they're in a boardroom. He's being really quiet instead of being a bastard, which is throwing her off, and she's kind of weirded out by it. So I was leaning over the table, gesturing toward a set of graphs when it happened. The timeline for the first milestone is a little I stopped mid-sentence, my breath caught in my throat. His hand pressed gently into my lower back before sliding down, settling on the curve of my ass. In the 9 months I had worked for him, he had never intentionally touched me. This was most definitely intentional. The heat from his hand burned through my skirt and into my skin. Every muscle in my body tensed, and it felt like my insides were liquefying. What the hell was he doing? My brain screamed at me to push his hand off, to tell him to never touch me again, but my body had other ideas. My nipples hardened, and I clenched my jaw in response. Traitor nipples. Sorry, I can't believe I just said that on the internet. I've been excited all day to say it.
Traitor nipples.
Traitor nipples. While my heart pounded in my chest, at least half a minute passed, and neither of us said anything, as his hand moved down my thigh, caressing. Our breathing and the muted noise of the city below were the only sounds in the still air of the conference room. Turn around, Miss Mills. His quiet voice broke the silence, and I straightened my back, eyes facing forward. I slowly turned, his hand skimming across me and sliding into my hip. I could feel the way his hand spread from his fingertips on my lower back all the way to where his thumb pressed against the soft skin just in front of my hip bone. I looked down to meet his eyes, which looked intently back at me. I could see his chest rising and falling, each breath deeper than the last. A muscle twitched in his sharp jaw as his thumb began to move, slowly sliding back and forth, his eyes never leaving mine. He was waiting for me to stop him. There had been plenty of time for me to shove him away or simply turn and leave. But I had too many feelings to sort out before I could react. I had never felt this way, and I had never expected to feel this about him. I wanted to slap him and then pull him up by his shirt and lick his neck. So I'll just stop there in case anyone wants to read it. Don't want to give a spoiler.
Really teasing there.
I think they're going to have sex.
Maybe.
She might just like grab him and pull him down by his tie and kiss him. Who knows?
He may rip her panties off.
He rips all of her panties and hoards them in his desk drawer. And he gives her a credit card to go buy more. And I was like, you know what? I wouldn't be sad.
And I would name my son after this.
And I would name my son Bennett.
Well, I can't believe this conversation happened. I can believe it happened, yeah.
Yeah.
But the turns and the twists and turns it took were not necessarily the ones I expected, but I enjoyed each and every one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like
that
we
was
got an
fun.
education, Melissa, don't you think?
Yeah, I do feel like I know a lot more about the genre. I don't know that I'm going to be dabbling in the genre anymore. And I think that's just because I'm just so satisfied in my actual sex life.
I'm very happy.
It's a little nod to my husband. And
Happy Valentine's Day to Tom. What a
Good
awesome
job.
lover.
Good job, Tom.
And he's
Really
loving that I'm
happy.
doing this. He's not here in the room, but when he listens to this, his
He's
face
gonna be
will
like, "You're cutting that."
I think he'll be proud of himself to know that I don't need any smut. I just feel so, I'm just going to say it again. I'm going to underline verbally this word, satisfied with my man in the bedroom.
I do need to add, I told Victoria this earlier, that if my partner in real life ever uttered any of the words that like the characters say in these books, I just burst out laughing. I absolutely would. Like, no, not turned on in the least in real life.
Yeah, if anyone called my puss a split peach, I would have to just like be like, you don't get to taste her. Goodbye. Just like walk out.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This was delightful, delicious. Thanks so much, folks. We've been so blessed to have these lewd ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. Till next time, folks.